Hello everyone, how are you doing today? It's so good to see you, to have you on today's session. Today we are looking at a concept or looking at an issue that cannot be overemphasized. A lot has been said about the issue of marriage, but then for today we're not looking at marriage in its entirety. We are just taking a portion of the issue of marriage to consider. All right, so we are looking at the topic understanding God's purpose for marriage. Understanding God's purpose for marriage. Why are we so particular about God's purpose for marriage? The reason is that a lot of persons have their own purposes for which they get into marriage, right? Some wealthy families can decide to have, a marriage union between their children because they want to cement their business network, or they want to cement their interest, as the case may be. So you see the son of a wealthy man getting married to the daughter of another wealthy man. That could be their purpose. So, but what we are looking at is what is God's purpose for marriage, and you understanding the purpose of God for marriage. All right. You can't talk about marriage without going into the scriptures. Why? Because the scriptures is the foundation upon which marriage union was instituted. So I'm going to take you through some portion of the Bible, even though it's not a Bible study, but I'll take you through some portion of the Bible so that we'll be able to understand the topic that we are looking at today. So if you don't mind, let's go to Genesis chapter 2. I read verse 18. Genesis chapter number 2, verse 18. And the Lord God said, it is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him an help meet for him. It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him an help meet for him. That's the King James Version. I would also like to read that same verse from the New Living Translation. And it says, and the Lord God said, it is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a companion who will help him. I will make a companion who will help him. See, a lot of men actually have this mindset that they don't need help, that they are sufficient on their own. But then the God who created us saw ahead of time that, look, this man that I have made, or this creature that I have made, is going to need help in the time to come. And so he decided to make a provision for the solution to the challenge that the man may have or would have after creation. So he decided to make a companion that would help man when the need arises. So in all of my studies of the scriptures, I have never seen anywhere in the Bible where God did something without a purpose. Everything God made, every action, every declaration, every commandment he gave, there is always a purpose behind it. If you take your time to go through the story of creation, you will see the purpose in the midst of every of the things that he created. So God would always have a purpose for whatever it is that he is doing. Why? Because God is a purpose-driven God. So if the God that created us is purpose-driven, then you and I should also be purpose-driven. You and I should not just be people that do things haphazardly. You shouldn't just be people that do things as it comes. No, you need to define the purpose behind whatever it is that you are doing. And that is why we are considering understanding God's purpose for marriage, because we have seen a lot of people going into marriages without really understanding the purpose for marriage from the perspective of God, and without also understanding the purpose for marriage from their own perspective. So when I talk about purpose, I'm simply talking about the why factor, W-H-Y. Why? Why did God create the world? Why did he make man? All right. Why did he allow Israel to go into captivity? Why did he send Jesus Christ, his only begotten son? Why? So it's a lot of why, but the why we are looking at today is the why for marriage. A wise man once said that when the purpose of a thing is not known, abuse is inevitable. When you don't understand the purpose of a thing, there is no way you will not abuse it. And that is why a lot of marriages are going through different phases of abuse, either from the man or from the woman or from the in-laws, as the case may be. So until we understand and until we identify the purpose for marriage, we will continue to treat marriage the way it should not be treated. Until we understand the purpose for marriage, a lot of us will continue to see marriage with the eyes with which it's not supposed to be seen, or looking at it from the wrong perspective. So it's very important for us to understand the purpose for marriage. Now, the question I have come to answer today is, why did God institute marriage? Why did he institute marriage? I have been married for a decade plus now, over 10 years, and I needed to ask myself this question before I went into marriage. Why am I going into marriage? Why do I want to marry? Why do I need to marry? Why do I want to marry when I married? Why do I want to marry the person I married? So I need to ask myself this same question, because I understand that if I don't clearly define, identify, and get to, appreciating the purpose for which I wanted to marry, there is no way I will not abuse marriage. So I needed to sit down and ask myself that question before I went into marriage. Now, in the course of my practice as a lawyer and my calling as a pastor, it has dawned on me that the lack of the understanding of the purpose of marriage is not restricted, neither is it limited to the secular world or to the church. It is more of a universal problem. It's a global problem that needs to be looked into, both in the church and outside the church. Many people don't understand the purpose of marriage, and that is why you see a lot of marriages breaking down these days. You see a lot of marriages, that were contracted maybe 1 year, and after 1 year the person is saying, I'm no longer interested, I want to go my way, I'm just tired of this relationship and the rest of that. And when I hear such things, and when I see such things, it baffles me, because I've been in marriage for over 10 years and I'm enjoying my marriage. So I begin to ask myself, what could be the problem? What went wrong? What are the issues that needed to be looked at? What is the foundation of this marriage? Was it that these people didn't understand the purpose for marriage before they came into marriage? There's a lot of questions you begin to ask when you get to that point. So I'm going to start my talk with looking at the wrong reasons why people go into marriage. And then we now look at the real reasons or the real purpose for which marriage was instituted by God. Now, the first reason, the wrong reason why people go into marriage is, you hear somebody tell you, I am old enough to marry. I'm old enough to marry. I'm sorry, please. Marriage is not about age. Or let me put it this way. Going into marriage is not about age. It's not the fact that, you are old enough and so you must get married. Marriage is about maturity. Marriage is about physical maturity, is about social maturity, is about spiritual maturity, is about psychological maturity, and then physical maturity. So if you're not mature physically, you're not mature spiritually, you're not mature socially, you're not matured psychologically, you're not matured emotionally, you are not supposed to go into marriage, because you are going to have a big problem in the course of your relationship or in the course of your union with your wife. Now, whenever I talk about this, I always remember a story that was told to me by somebody some years ago, and he said there was a lady who got married, a very young lady and a young man. They got married, not old to get into marriage, not mature enough to get into marriage, and then after a year, of course, she became pregnant, had a baby, and the mother-in-law came around, to take care of the baby for about 3 months. Thereafter, she had to go back to her husband's house. All right. So one of the nights, the baby woke up and started crying, and the young mother didn't know what to do. So she left the baby on the bed, and then she sat down on the floor and began to cry. Now the husband, who has been living or sleeping in another room, heard the cry of the baby and his wife, and it was like, what's happening in this place? So he went into the room, saw the baby on the bed, saw the wife on the floor, and both of them were crying. And he asked the wife, what is the problem? And the wife said, I don't know. Why is the baby crying? He said, I don't know.